do you have any indication that that's of that as well?
I don't have any assessment on his location, no.
And do you have any indication of what concessions he may have received regarding Shogu or anything else for turning around?
I do not. I do not. I would note in respect to that, we've gotten a lot of questions about with respect to Shogu or Gerasimov, and I will say, it relates to the last question I answered from Matt, that the United States does not take a position on the leadership of the Russian Federation. We do not take a position on the leadership of the Russian Ministry of Defense. Our policies have always been with respect to actions that Russia has taken. We want a Russia that is not invading its neighbors and trying to violate the territorial integrity and sovereignty of its neighbors. We want a Russia that is not conducting malign influence operations across the world. That has always been our policy with Russia, not the disposition of the Ministry of Defense or any other offices inside the country.
The one on the record statement that came out on Saturday was the confidence in command and control of the nuclear forces. And I infer from that there is military-to-military communication, as one would expect, between us and the Russians, in contrast, obviously, to a different situation with China.
I won't speak to any inferences. I will say that I will let the Pentagon speak to any military-to-military communications, whether it happened or not. I will say, however, as the Secretary said yesterday, we do not see any change in the disposition of Russian nuclear forces and have not changed the disposition of ours.
And the Secretary did say in some of his interviews that Putin's influence, power, whatever, has clearly been shaken by this, by his speech, by the whole nexus of what has happened. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I will say, as I said a moment ago, this certainly was a new moment. If you think of the events of the last few years, as the Secretary said, 16 months ago, the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin envisioned that Russian forces would be taking Kyiv. And instead, over the weekend, we saw Russian forces taking a Russian Ministry of Defense office inside a Russian city. We saw the entire pretext of this war being questioned openly, something we have done, something our allies and partners have done, something that you have not seen inside the borders of Russia. In fact, you can be thrown in jail for taking that step as an ordinary citizen inside of Russia. We saw Yevgeny Prigozhin directly questioning not just the Ministry of Defense officials, as he's done for some time, but really directly challenging President Putin's leadership. Those are all significant steps and a significant change from what we've seen, certainly in the last 16 months, but over a number of years. What that means going forward, we don't know.
Well, has Vladimir Putin, as you know him and as this administration knows him, tolerated this kind of insubordination, whether in the immediate future or long term? Would he tolerate this kind of challenge to his authority?
I would not ever want to speculate on how Vladimir Putin might respond to any event, certainly not an event inside Russia.
Okay, to follow up.
Kylie.
On the diplomatic efforts that were made over the weekend, did Russians respond to those messages from U.S. diplomats, Ambassador Tracy and the others?
I won't speak to the Russian response. I'll just speak to the messages that we delivered to them.
I'm not asking you to characterize them. I'm just asking you to say yes or
Well,
no.
it was a conversation. It wasn't a one-way. These weren't one-way conversations where you deliver and the other side hangs up. It was a conversation, yes.
Okay. And then one thing that the Secretary said over the weekend is that to the extent that Russia is now distracted by what's happening internally in its country, that could create an additional advantage for the Ukrainians. How exactly is the United States encouraging the Ukrainians to take advantage of this moment?
So I would say that I would frame it slightly differently. We continue to supply the Ukrainians with the equipment they need to conduct the counteroffensive and to defend themselves long term. We continue to have intelligence sharing channels with the Ukrainians. We continue to have military channels. We continue to have diplomatic channels that are open with Ukraine. What the Secretary was speaking to is the fact that you did see Wagner forces withdraw from Ukraine and instead move on a Russian city. How that shakes out, what happens in the coming days with respect to Wagner forces or other Russian military forces, I don't think we can say, but certainly we are in close consultation with Ukraine and the Ukrainian military about the ongoing counteroffensive.